people have got accustomed to free access. And for that free access and the speed of that access and speed of service, they've overlooked their data and how their data is utilized.
We need to have a privacy coin. We have this thing called Midnight.
One of the troubling aspects of the industry as a whole is that everything you do on a blockchain is transparent. Everything you do on a blockchain is not only transparent, but also immutable. And that's what Midnight is doing. It's bringing the best of both worlds together and enabling the application design to determine what level of privacy they incorporate into their service.
What barriers are you still facing, looking for more use cases or more examples of how to use it?
There's two use cases that I've seen that really stand out beyond the financial market.
Privacy has become one of the most contested design challenges in blockchain. Most privacy solutions either sacrifice compliance or limit functionality. I'm Dr. Lorena Nessi for CCN, and today I'm joined by Fahmi Syed, president of the Midnight Foundation. We'll discuss how Midnight approaches privacy-preserving blockchain design, the role of zero-knowledge proofs in real-world applications, and how compliant privacy infrastructure fits into the next phase of crypto adoption. Hi, Fahmi. Nice to see you today. Welcome to CCN. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Lorena. Morning. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. So we're going to start with the basics. How does Midnight describe what it builds, and where does Midnight Network fit within the blockchain ecosystem today?
Yeah, great question. So very simply, we think of Midnight being providing programmable privacy or rational privacy, as we've termed it, to the blockchain industry. So when you think about the blockchain industry as it's evolved, what it has allowed is decentralization. It has allowed disintermediation, so direct ownership of assets, of transactions, and evolving that through smart contracts to automate a lot of more transactions, whether it's in financial services, DeFi, as we've termed it, or other areas. It has created a whole new industry in the last 15, 16 years since the advent of Bitcoin. But one of the troubling aspects of the industry as a whole is that everything you do on a blockchain is transparent. Everything you do on a blockchain is not only transparent, but also immutable. So all of your secrets, all of your possessions, all of your transactions are there for everybody to see. And if you think about your interactions in the real world, both physical and digital, more often than not, you are rational about what kind of information you will share. You're rational when you're given a choice around cookies and how your data is harvested by large corporations, what you're willing to accept. So with Midnight, what we are bringing is the core principles of blockchain technology, but then putting on top of that the ability not only to fully shield data and metadata, so who you are, what you're doing, and where you're doing it, but also with the use of our smart contract language, Compact, to also then enable selective disclosure of that information, which may then enable you to access different pools of transactions or different services, or go further in your journey because of those abilities and services that we're bringing within Midnight.
So there are all of these terms in tech, and we talk about privacy by design, privacy by choice, selective privacy, and you're telling me about this programmable or rational design. I always confuse my left and right. So in simple terms, can we start with privacy by choice and privacy by design? What's the difference, and where does Midnight fit, or how does it do it?
Sure. So when you think about privacy by design, then what you're looking at is blockchains where everything is private, every transaction is private. So think of Zcash, Monero, that's privacy, full privacy by design. Now within that, there's very little ability to program that privacy, to determine how you expose different elements of positions. And we've seen with those particular chains, and they were, pioneers in the field, that they've come against regulatory hurdles, because regulators require, and large regulated entities require KYC, KYB, know your client, know your business. And in these fully private by design technologies, that is not possible. And then privacy by choice is, I think about it, think about private blockchains, so the likes of JP Morgan and those, you can choose, rather than to go and use a permissionless blockchain, which is fully transparent, you might choose to go and use a private blockchain where your information is available within a certain universe, an ecosystem. But again, within that, you're being permissioned. So that sort of goes against the thesis of decentralization. With Midnight, we're sort of blending or merging those two worlds. We are enabling a blockchain where your data, your position, your assets, your transactions, all of that data and your metadata, more importantly, who you are, is fully shielded or can be fully shielded. And that choice is at the application level, not at the blockchain level. The blockchain has both a public state and a private state. So the choice is at the application level. So the application developers, the corporates who come and build services on Midnight, can give that choice of whether you go down a public route or a private route in terms of shielding transactions. But once you go down the private route, that often is not enough, because in certain industries, there is a requirement for disclosure. So even if you go down the fully private route by choice within Midnight, through the smart contract, you can make disclosures. You can share information. So you can share information in a way that doesn't give away sensitive data. So think about age verification. You do not need to give your date of birth to prove that you're over a certain age to go and participate in a certain transaction, whether that's buying alcohol, gambling, or other services. Why should everybody know my exact date of birth? I can prove mathematically through a zero knowledge proof that I'm able to participate. The same applies to jurisdiction and to many other functionalities. Am I a US based person? Am I European based? Can I access different liquidity pool, different financial services, and so forth? And that's what Midnight is doing. It's bringing the best of both worlds together and enabling the application design to determine what level of privacy they incorporate into their service.
Does this is it in the hands of the developers of the apps, or can the users have any say about it?
Absolutely. So it goes back to the application design. So the way that Midnight is designed, the ability to execute a private transaction can be delegated from one party to another. So if you think about, and it goes back to tokenomics, and I'm sure we'll speak about that later on, the ability to delegate the transaction function is a design choice at the application level. Now, the application designer might end up with two models. One, where they are the ones executing the private function, and therefore the information is flowing through them and they get to see certain data. However, the alternative route is they delegate the gas fee, dust, which is the shielded resource emitted by Night, the ownership token. Dust can be delegated to the users, at which point the user is in full control of their data. And therefore, when they present that data through the transaction, only they have the keys to view that. And only they can determine what they select to disclose. The application is just facilitating that service. So going forward with Midnight, you end up with two service models. And maybe for the one where you get full privacy, where it's delegated, the user may have to pay for that service. And for the one where they go through the application level, where the application operator is performing the execution, in that case, they may get that for free. So you end up with two different service models, two different fee models, and therefore the user gets to have a choice about which route they follow.
Okay, so it basically depends, I would say, on the specific application, on the developers, and maybe also on the regulation, the specific regulatory framework. Is that
potentially, again, depending on the service or the application that's being designed? If you think about DeFi today, DeFi is unregulated to the most extent. Now, with DeFi, many large participants do not participate because of a concern around the identity of the counterpart, the KYC, KYB element. So within Midnight, you could end up building a DeFi where people can prove their identities. They can prove they are of a certain jurisdiction, of a certain credit worthiness or net worth. Maybe they prove that they are a regulated entity. And if they can prove that, only those participants will be in that DeFi liquidity pool. So Midnight can operate both or enable applications to be designed to be compliant. There are enough tools within the ledger and also the smart contract technology to enable a regulated DeFi or regulated type solutions. However, that's not the Midnight Network's choice. That's a choice we give to the application and the developers.
Okay, good. So what's the specific role of Midnight Foundation? How does it support Midnight's network, governance, and then later we can go into the tokenomics?
Yeah, sure. So look, the foundation's role is to grow the ecosystem, to be the first and foremost, the custodians of that network and the ecosystem. So our role is ensuring that the development companies who are building within the Midnight mainnet and network are making sure that they are delivering excellent sort of not only technology, but support and services around that. Then on top of that, it's bringing developers, it's growing the community, it's bringing in partners and highlighting to them what Midnight does differently and why, whether you're building natively on Midnight or we use Midnight's privacy solutions or programmable solutions to enhance applications sitting on other chains. And we're not tribalist, we want other chains and other applications to come and work with us, then we want to bring those partners in. Ultimately, for us, good technology with privacy at its core, with selective disclosure, growing that community, bringing in partners, allows us to create a fervent ecosystem. And therefore, we want to be the privacy chain for all chains, that we want to be the choice for privacy for all builders. And there are many, privacy as a theme has become very relevant in the last 12 months. We've been building Midnight for a number of years, so we're glad to see that people recognize that one of the key transitions to better adoption, wider adoption, is with privacy at its core within a blockchain.
Absolutely. So there are these two questions. There are many questions, but let's go part by part. Which real world cases actually illustrate how these zero knowledge proofs work on Midnight?
Okay, so it's very easy to talk about finance. So I'm going to avoid talking about finance because every chain wants to talk about DeFi and everything else they can do. I've spoken a little bit about you could build regulated liquidity pools and things like that because of identity and proofs of that. But there's two use cases that I've seen that really stand out beyond the financial market. One is around healthcare. We have a partner who, and I've spoken about this quite a number of times, who is bringing proof of patient data to the Midnight Network. That is in a market like Turkey, where we have clinics with 3 million patients, which are exposing that proof of data for use in terms of clinical information and passing that in a safe way without exposing sensitive data information publicly. And then we've got a large children's hospital in California, which is looking to use Midnight in interclinical trials with other competitor type clinics and organizations. We think that has great use cases beyond just those two and could really travel into other markets, whether it's a regulated healthcare market or less regulated. We are already showing the use cases around that. And we have great hopes of taking that partner, working with that partner to introduce them to large medical service firms and databases. So really take that technology forward. The other use case is around supply chain. In this case, supply chain related to forensic evidence. If you think about forensic evidence around criminal cases, they tend to be very sensitive, both around the victim, around the police force touching that data, but also the forensics people touching that data. Very important to track that without, again, exposing sensitive data publicly. And putting people at risk. So we have a use case, a trial going on in Uttar Pradesh in India, one of the largest states in India, and that is going very well. And for us, we'd like to see that partner as we launch our mainnet, take that live, and then potentially expand that into other states and regions in India. And then maybe that use case gets extended to other countries. So there are two use cases where we think about data and the sensitivity around that data and not putting that information on chain, but how you can use zero knowledge proofs to extend. And long term, that may end up meaning better research in medicine, better drug trials, better drug evaluations. And if you can expose patient information in that way privately, then maybe that's additional revenue into the clinics, into the hospitals, fueling further research, or maybe helping subsidize patient premiums and costs.
So in a world in which data is this new oil expression, in which we are transacting with data on a day-to-day basis, what suggests that institutions are actually ready for a network like Midnight? And what barriers are you still facing, looking for more use cases or more examples of how to use it?
Yeah, I think the first thing is, before you think about institutions, think about people. So people have, with the age of technology and the evolution of technology, and it has evolved very rapidly over the last 20, 30 years, people have got accustomed to free access. And for that free access and the speed of that access and speed of service, they've overlooked their data and how their data is utilized. So if you think about the large companies that dominate the global securities market, equities market, the largest companies have made money from data, monetizing our data, our information. So if you think about the current generation of people who've grown up with mobile phones and using, a lot of them are shying away from certain services and applications, recognizing how much it consumes them, but also in terms of doom scrolling and other things, but also in terms of how their data is used, how they are sometimes manipulated through information. And we see that very much in social media, in terms of news, and how partisan people have become around left and right views around the world. So I think people's mindsets are slowly changing. People recognize there are browsers out there, like Brave, who we partnered with, who do put privacy first as part of their sort of philosophy and their business model. And they are still very profitable by giving people the choice of being private and selectively sharing information for marketing purposes. So in terms of institutions, for institutions to participate, they recognize the value of blockchain. They recognize the value proposition that blockchain brings in terms of decentralization, reducing costs. If you're a large financial institution, the cost of compliance is very expensive. Managing data, having legal people and compliance teams around that, monitoring that. If you have a breach, it's very expensive. So anything they can do to resolve or absolve themselves of those responsibilities or those costs is something they're always willing to explore. So this is not about taking all the data away from them. This is them, in certain cases with certain enterprises, recognizing that there are certain things that they do want to share with other parties. If you think about confidential compute and the evolution of that, then how do different computing environments speak to each other without disclosing sensitive information? How do blockchains speak to each other? We talk about interchain interoperability, but again, all of that is public. So how do you take data transactions from a private chain to another private chain where you need a meta chain or a layer in between? And that's where Midnight could be a service to those type of enterprise type solutions. And equally, as trading financial institutions, healthcare institutions, supply chains think about using blockchain, they need privacy, but private blockchains do not work because by design, it means that somebody else gets to see your data. Somebody else gets to decide how you operate. So that's no different to current Web 2 solutions. So that's where, again, a privacy enabling solution like Midnight, which is at the application level, does allow those enterprises to think differently about how they build their technology stacks.
Brilliant. A good solution, I would say. So let's go into the tokenomics. What are the roles of Night and Dust? What are these?
Yes, good question. Great question. Something I try and explain and I try and simplify. So in the world of blockchain today, everybody has a single token. That token, whether it's Ethereum, Cardano, Polkadot, Bitcoin, that token is both your asset for capital purposes and speculation, but also your utility, your transaction fee is paid by using the same token. If you think about the world today, if you have an iPhone, you do not pay for your iPhone in Apple shares. Apple shares are your capital investment. You have a different time horizon and different targets for that, versus you pay for your Apple phone in sterling, euros, dollars, or fiat, which is your utility. So in Midnight, we've said and looked at the tokenomics of other chains, said, right, we're going to have an ownership governance token called Knight. Knight will be publicly visible. It's an unshielded token. We listed on multiple exchanges. And in fact, we went live with Knight in December 2025 across multiple exchanges. And what Knight gives you is access and ownership of the Midnight network. But once you own Knight, it will perpetually emit, almost like a dividend, a secondary resource called Dust. The other way to think about it is Knight is your power station plugged into the electricity grid. Dust is your electricity. So as long as you own Knight, you get a supply of electricity. That electricity is enough to service your transaction need. Now, if you have higher transactions needs, you need more electricity. Therefore, you need more Dust. Therefore, you need to go and own more Knight. What it enables, though, is for firms, application builders, users to fix in and lock in their cost of transactions. Because once you know how much Knight you need, you will have enough Dust powering all your transactions forever, perpetually. But the other nice thing about that solution is not only does it not cannibalize your ownership asset, but also it does mean that you can delegate your app, that service, Dust, that resource, to other people, other users. So as an application layer, you could decide to control all of the data and all the proofs by running all of the transactions, or you can delegate that Dust resource to your clients to come and run, and you may charge them for that resource so they have full privacy. Equally, what it means is in the future, large enterprises which do not want to hold a speculative crypto asset on their balance sheet can come and use Midnight and transactions as a service on Midnight using Dust. They can find large custodians, large exchanges who'd be willing to delegate transactions as a service using their Dust resource, so they can come and give them a file and they commit that file and that proof onto the network without ever having to own the volatile crypto asset. So it gives many use cases and advantages in following this model. And we're very excited by what developers and applications will do with that functionality.
Brilliant. Good. Okay. And then I also know that there is Cardano involved in partnership with Midnight. Is that correct? What makes it different, or how does it work?
Yes. So we recognize that launching a blockchain is complex and it's difficult and it takes a lot of responsibility. Ultimately, you need stability. You need to also protect the privacy around what we're doing in terms of the programmable privacy. So what we wanted to do was separate the launch of the token and ownership to the launch of the network. So Knight currently is a Cardano native asset. Therefore, we instantly benefit from Cardano's access to liquid counterparts. So that's custodians, exchanges, wallets. So that's a huge benefit because we're leveraging that Cardano infrastructure. But the Midnight network itself is separate, and Dust, the resource, only exists on Midnight. So that blockchain, we will deliver through stages through 2026. And as we deliver those different features and capabilities within the network in a responsible way, including rolling out governance, we'll roll in new partners showcasing the capabilities of what Midnight Network can do. But the benefit of leveraging Cardano for the launch means that we can focus now almost entirely and very responsibly on the launch of the network without worrying about the token and how that operates in the market.
I see. So, Fahmi, before we finish, I would like to talk about the future. And when I think about Midnight, I always think about privacy as,
Yes.
the default characteristic. So how do you see the future of privacy in relation to blockchain?
Yeah, so when people talk about privacy, right now blockchains often have a negative connotation. Blockchains are used for money laundering, for really bad things. In fact, blockchains are very secure because everything on the blockchain is visible and can be proven. Now, once people bring privacy in, then they go back to the same semantics around, oh, you're trying to obscure, you're trying to hide something. But let's go back to where we are currently in the real world. Everybody has a right to privacy. You're given a choice every time you go and transact on any internet protocol service. What we recognize is that privacy is not about hiding. It's about choice. It's about a choice of what information you're willing to share. So with Midnight enabling programmable privacy, rational privacy, we're giving people a choice of whether they want to be public, whether they want to be private, and even in the private state, what they're willing to selectively disclose in order to access services. And that becomes a choice to the individual and choice at the application level. And once you have choice, you then you're empowered to make decisions, to take certain. So in the future with Midnight, you may have a choice of having a transparent DeFi solution or a private accredited solution where only permission actors who fulfill a certain identity criteria can participate. But you're not giving away all your secrets in doing so. And therefore that choice gives you freedom to decide, do I use this liquidity pool, choice A, or do I use choice B? It gives you choices around the services. Do I use a service where the application level gets to see everything I do? Or do I want to pay for something where I'm delegated the choice to go and transact privately? And once you have choice and you're empowered, you have freedom. And that's what the blockchains are about. It's about freedom. It's about moving away from the monopolies that we've seen in large sort of internet sort of services. And that's what we want to encourage. Privacy is not about hiding. It's about that choice. And for us at Midnight, I want to be talking less through this year. And I want the partners who are building and showcasing Midnight to be talking more about what they've been able to deliver with Midnight's technology. And in the future, I want Midnight to be almost the privacy engine for almost all services in blockchain or beyond. And we should almost be invisible like any good technology. Good technology is not spoken of. Good technology normally is hidden away. And whether you're servicing, I don't know, Apple Watch and healthcare data on Apple Watch, and some of that data sits in Midnight, or proof of that data sits in Midnight, or whether you're servicing TEE, trusted execution environments for Google Cloud and beyond. Again, we should be a hidden technology stack that nobody speaks about. And the irony here is, here I am very publicly speaking about a privacy enabling solution. The best outcome for me over the next 2-3 years is that slowly Midnight is so widely used, ubiquitously used, that we become invisible to everybody.
Yes, invisible but usable.
Yes,
people using
absolutely.
it and adopting it.
That's right.
Great, Fahmi. Great. Thank you so much for joining us today. It has been a very interesting conversation.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you, Lorena.
Thank you. That was Fahmi Syed from Midnight Foundation, and I'm Dr. Lorena Nessi for CCN. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.